Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to do another installment in my 3 romance reads series. Basically, I read 3 different romance books and then I come here and just blurt all my thoughts out about them. This time around we've actually got 3 contemporary romances. So we have All the Feels by Olivia Dade, Love Theoretically by Hazelwood, and The True Love Experiment by Christina. Having held both of these 2 up, if I wanted to plan this a lot better, I probably would have included Happy Place by Emily Henry. That would have made for a very beautiful thumbnail, but unfortunately I did read Emily Henry's new book and I didn't love it. I just didn't have many thoughts to say about it. I just kind of read it and it just passed over me. I don't know what to say. So instead you're going to get my thoughts on All the Feels instead. I think I started off these videos by going through in the order of preference, going from my least favourite to favourite. This time round I decided that I wanted to do it in order of when I read them, but funnily enough that has ended up being in order of preference. The one that I read the furthest back is the one that I like the least, and the one that I read most recently is the one that I love. And I promise you it's not just that my memory is shocking, though that is also true. So the first one that I'm going to be talking to you about today is All the Feels by Olivia Dade. This is the follow-up to Spoiler Alert, which I read earlier this year. I actually can link down below a previous installment of 3 romance reads where I talk about that book. I really enjoyed that one. It wasn't like a 5-star for me, but I really enjoyed the dynamic. Ordinary girl ending up dating a famous Hollywood star, her being a fanfiction writer, and basically both of them learning that there's more to each other than meets the eye. I mean, it is a much better book than my description just then, that is very vague, would give you. All the Feels is not a direct sequel, but we are meeting characters that we met in the previous book. In this, the celebrity character is Alex, who, like Marcus in the previous book, is a lead star on this fantasy series Gods of the Gates, which I think is meant to be some sort of loose interpretation of the Aeneid. Lots and lots of references to Roman gods and mythology. And I think in this series, Alex plays Cupid. Seemingly he has it all, but he's actually been getting in quite a lot of trouble with his producers, them accusing him of acting out. And after one rather major incident, they decide that he needs to have a handler, that they are going to pay for somebody to keep track of his movements at all times. Enter Lauren, who is some sort of obscure relation to one of the producers, who gets roped in at the last minute to come be his handler. Neither of them are particularly happy with this arrangement, but Alex is very vocal about how displeased he is about this and about her. And so they instantly get off on the wrong foot, him kind of insulting her right to her face. But they have to spend a lot of time together. She's not really meant to be taking her eyes off of him. The narrative jumps between both of their perspectives, and the more that they are spending time together in forced proximity, the more they're starting to understand each other more and really find out that they have a good rapport and really get on. And Lauren is starting to think that maybe Alex is not as bad as the producers are painting him out to be. Maybe there are actually reasons for the way that he's acted in the past. If you have read Spoiler Alert, you'll know that there is quite a pivotal scene with Alex during the course of the book, and that does overlap with this narrative. But then with this narrative, we get to see the fallout of that incident. I don't really want to give too many spoilers, but basically it kind of leaves Alex and Lauren on the out and working out how Alex is going to recover his career. And they start to feel like with all of the banter and bickering that they do and how good their chemistry is, maybe they can use that to their advantage. This book honestly was a bit 50-50 for me. I really enjoyed the initial banter between these 2 characters. I enjoyed them getting to know each other, but the further on that we got through the book, and particularly, like I say, after that pivotal moment that is spoken about in Spoiler Alert, I found myself kind of losing interest. It felt like the book was getting very repetitive. Lauren, like April, is a plus-size woman, but where April is very confident in herself, and while there are mentions of other people having an issue with that, in this, Lauren's weight and appearance is brought up a lot, including by Alex himself. And I don't know, it just kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth, the amount of times that people were being like, ugh, look at her. And I know that that's not Olivia Dade's intent. I know that she is very much on Lauren's side, but it was just, oh, it just happened a lot and I didn't like it. Particularly as Alex and Lauren do start to fall in love and do start being out in public with each other. Just some of the things that people were saying were vile, and like, I know what the internet is like, I know what people are like. I don't always want to read about people being vile. There's also, like in Spoiler Alert, a lot of discussions on fanfiction, because the TV series that Marcus and Alex work on, Gods of the Gates, is one that has spawned a massive fandom and a lot of fanfiction. And we know through Spoiler Alert that Alex ends up actually writing some himself, and it is quite funny how passionate he does get about it. But I felt sometimes like the discussions on like the technicalities and logistics of writing fanfiction just got a little bit too much for me. I don't know if it's because I have read some fan fiction, but I've never written it myself. I don't know a lot of like the naming conventions, but it did just get a little bit grating. And like I say, once again, a bit repetitive. I feel like there are a lot of scenes and conversations in here that you could have just cut out. By the end of the book, I was kind of skimming it because it felt like there was a lot in here that we didn't necessarily need, which I didn't really feel with Spoiler Alert. That felt a much tighter book. And like I say, just little bits and bobs, these little niggles here and there made it so that by the time I got to the end of this, I wasn't desperate to pick up the next one, which I think is Shipwrecked. Whereas with Spoiler Alert, I just wanted to read more and more. So yeah, a bit disappointing for me. Then next up we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This I think will be my 4th Ali Hazelwood now. And once again, kind of like with Olivia Dade, as much as there were parts of this that I really enjoyed, this probably would be my least favourite that I've read so far. So in this we've got the main character of Elsie, who is working as an adjunct professor in thermodynamics. However, unfortunately she is not being paid particularly well and has to work across a lot of different campuses. What she is really looking for is to be offered a tenured position. She finally gets the opportunity to interview for MIT for this coveted tenured position, but she knows that she's going to be up against one other candidate. There's a lot of conversation in here about academic rivalry between theoretical physicists and practical physicists. I'm sorry, I'm not a science person, I don't know the terminology. And then when she finds out that one of her interviewers is going to be Jack Smith, she's shocked and annoyed for quite a few reasons. One being that when he was a teenager, he wrote this scathing article. He wrote an article which basically lampooned theoretical physics in a way that was not picked up by the editors and ended up being run in this academic journal. And it basically tanked the career of Elsie's mentor, who was the chief editor. So she is obviously very cross with him about this, as she is a theoretical physicist herself. But the other reason that she's very cross with him is that she realises she's met him before, because as we say, by day she is an adjunct professor, barely able to make ends meet, and so by night she offers her services as a fake girlfriend, often being paid by men to act as a fake girlfriend for family gatherings where they just want their parents to get off their backs. And that's how she's able to have a bit of a side income, because teaching does not pay. However, unfortunately, one of her favourite clients, and her most recent clients, is actually the brother of Jack. And because his professional name is different to his family name, she just never made the personal connection. But now she's being confronted with the fact that she had made up a lot of lies when they first met at the family dinner. She knows that she is lying, but he doesn't know why. And so a feud does emerge. It's very clear from the get-go that Jack wants another candidate to get the role, and Elsie is determined that he's not going to get under her skin. We've very much got an enemies to lovers dynamic starting in this book. This is by far Ali Hazelwood's most academic novel, talking the most about academic rivalry, about how pitiful the pay can be, how hard it can be to make ends meet even if you have a PhD. And I won't lie, a lot of the physics talk did go over my head, but I do generally expect that with these books. But it was very, very interesting. However, kind of like with All the Feels, I did find myself towards the end of the book getting a little bit bored. While the banter at the beginning of the book was fantastic, and I do love a little bit of enemies to lovers, as they start to recognise their feelings for each other and they do start to spend more time with each other, and especially as always happens with these romance books, there is a third act conflict. It just felt very manufactured to me. It felt like we were going around in circles with a lot of conversations that they were having, and once again it just felt like you could have cut a good chunk of this book out. As much as I do love Ali Hazelwood, there are definitely tropes that she leans on a lot, which you do see in here. Particularly there is a reveal of one of the characters being a moustache twirling villain, which always seems to happen in her books. You have a character who you think is perfectly nice, and then spoiler alert, they were a baddie the whole time, and they just behave in a way that no human has ever behaved, or at least no human I've ever met. And yeah, it just felt a bit disappointing for how great the rest of the book had been. I feel like with Love on the Brain and the Love Hypothesis, there were elements of silly right from the beginning of the book, so when there is a bit of a sharp turn into silliness, that it seems normal. In this it just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. So yeah, I just generally felt like there were some tone issues with this. I felt like the conflicts in this book were a bit manufactured. I did enjoy the banter. I did enjoy them arguing with each other right at the beginning of the book. I thought that was very fun. Whereas with the True Love Experiment, I actually had the alternative issue, in that I felt like the first like 50 to 100 pages of this were really slow going. I was actually tempted to DNF this at one point, but then as I kept on going through it, it became a lot more enjoyable, and probably my favourite off the bunch. So in the True Love Experiment, we are following Fizzy Chan. Fizzy is 37 years old and she is a prolific romance novelist. She's very popular in her field. However, she has a bit of a secret, which is that she has never actually fallen in love herself, and therefore she feels like a bit of a fraud, and she's starting to get quite stuck in her life and feeling like she can't write anymore, and feeling like, how can I write about love if I still haven't felt it? We're also following Connor Prince, who is a documentary filmmaker, but who gets commissioned by his work to make a dating show, which he is quite reluctant to do, but he ends up being inspired when he sees Fizzy's books on his sister's shelf. Finding out that she lives nearby, he decides to get in contact with her. They don't get off on the best foot. There is a bit of misunderstanding, but between the two of them, they come up with this show called The True Love Experiment, in which Fizzy is going to date a lot of common romance novel archetypes: the Mr. Darcy, the cinnamon roll, the one that got away, and viewers will vote in on who they think is her true love. However, like I say, both of them had gotten off on the wrong foot, but through the course of planning this show and getting to know each other, they realise that both of them are suffering from a bit of ennui and they both want to get their mojo back. And so they start spending more time with each other, going on little adventures before the show is due to start. And of course, as you could predict, they start to develop feelings for each other quite quickly, I would say. But of course, this puts them in a bit of a conundrum because by the time they realise how much they like each other, the show is about to start. Fizzy is meant to be going on dates with all of these men while she's harbouring feelings for her producer. Meanwhile, Connor knows that there is a lot of pressure on him to make this show work. And if there is any sniff of scandal, particularly a producer sleeping with the lead of his show, that would just undermine the credibility of the whole show. And so what are they gonna do? Like I say, I thought this book was quite slow going. It felt like it took quite a while for the two to eventually meet. And when they did, there was that initial misunderstanding, which felt very much like a normal third act breakup, where they're just not really listening to each other. I felt like you could have taken out that misunderstanding from the very beginning. There didn't need to be any conflict between the two of them. Once they get to know each other and start to become friends, this becomes a lot more enjoyable. As with any romance book that I love, there's a great bit of back and forth and banter. Fizzy has a great discussion with Connor about why he dismisses romance books and why he dismisses reality TV and how sexist and dismissive he's being. And not everything has to be like great art in order to be worthy and in order to just get basic respect. I was quite surprised by how quickly the two of them kind of acknowledged their feelings for each other. But once the show started to get going, the conflict between them felt very, very real in a way that earlier in the book it hadn't. The pressure and the scrutiny felt very tangible. And there is a third act breakup in this book. There are moments where you are kind of like, how are they going to resolve this? But it actually felt like a proper conflict. You know, reputations are on the line here. It didn't feel completely manufactured and it felt like a hard decision. I didn't know how they were going to get out of this situation. So the end of the book actually felt earned and was actually really, really enjoyable. Well, I wouldn't say this is my favourite romance book. I wouldn't even say it's my favourite Christina Lauren book, but I did really enjoy this. The banter was sweet, the conflict did feel real, and most of the characters are lovable in some sort of way. I think if you're going to pick any of them out of the three, this is definitely the one. So there we go, a brief little look at the romance books that I've been reading recently. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today. Alternatively, I would love to hear any recommendations. I would particularly love to get some historical romance because we were severely lacking that this time around. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.